Welcome to the Purposefully Human Radio Hour, where we have conversations with interesting people about creating a more human world. I'm Neal Woodson, and with me is my co-host, Jerry Seifert, and we really appreciate you joining us today. So before we get to our guest, Jerry, what's the news in your world?
Well, I had the opportunity to spend a few minutes this week and look back on the last year uh, with the radio hour and even some of the work we did before that. And we now have 14 uh, programs available on the website. Eight radio hour conversations and six author interviews. So, folks watching, if we invite you to take the time to catch up on the episodes you missed. You missed a lot. We think it would be time well spent if you took even just one of the ones that you missed and took the opportunity to see it. And of course, let us know what you think. Let us know your ideas for the future and enjoy. As far as me, Neal, it is right at that cusp of summer starting here in Seattle. We had 80 degrees the other day, which is
Does that happen in Seattle? You have summer?
yeah, we had 80 degrees the other day, and today it's 51 and raining. So
Oh, so that was your one day of summer.
there's been a lot of joking about that, yes. But good days are right around the corner, and the nice thing here, so I didn't know this until I moved here, is that once we turn the corner, it's going to be like that for several months. And so, really looking forward to it. There's a ton of things to do here, and I am not paid by the city of Seattle to say all this. I
Well,
just found this a wonderful place.
Here on the East Coast, we've had absolutely beautiful weather for the last week or so. I'm very grateful for that. But for me, I saw this week, I saw a disturbing stat. In the first 6 months of 2026, 5 million people, it's probably more than that now, but 5 million people have been laid off from their jobs.
Oh gosh.
And it got me to thinking about what being human is all about. And a thought occurred to me that maybe being human is really about answering the question, do people matter to you? And
Mm,
if so, what are you doing to show them that they do matter? And so, with that thought, I have been trying to be more blatant about showing people that they matter. Case in point, today I was in a bagel shop, and the young lady who was at the counter serving me, she had a radiant smile. And so when I was done with my transaction, I turned to her and I said, keep smiling because you are making people's days by doing it. You're making mine today. And
that's
she
great.
just melted. She just melted. And she was just so appreciative. And I could tell that for that moment, she just felt like she mattered.
Yeah.
And she certainly did matter to me. And it really did make my day. So I'm going to challenge everybody out there to find ways to just blatantly show people that they matter to you.
That's
So
great.
that's my challenge to the world today.
You saw her, you acknowledged her as a fellow human and validated that she was alive and she existed and that she mattered. That's fantastic. Good practice.
And I think she saw kind of a little bit more meaning to her job, which leads us to our guest.
Good,
But
good segue.
before, but before I get to our guest, I want to mention this program comes to you from the Purposefully Human community, which is a group committed to giving people a voice and creating a more human world and more humane organizations. You can find out more at purposefullyhuman.com or go to LinkedIn and search for Purposefully Human. So now we can talk about our guest. Today we have with us Jeff Hilimire. Jeff is an accomplished entrepreneur who has launched multiple successful for-profit and nonprofit organizations, including Dragon Army, Ripples Media, and 48 in 48. He's the father of five inspiring, empathetic children, and is a co-founder and partner at Purpose Group, which is on a mission to create more purpose-driven companies in the world. He's also written 6 books on purpose, leadership, and personal growth, and he serves on the boards of 48 and 48, Goody Nation, Youth Mean Business, and the Carter Center. Jeff, welcome to the Radio Hour.
Happy to be here.
It's really, really good to have you, and you have an impressive bio and some credentials there. But I think the most impressive, and the one that stood out to me, I went to your website, was the fact that you pointed out that you hopefully have empathetic children. And being a father is obviously very important to you. And Jerry and I are both fathers, and I think that that's just phenomenal that you put that kind of first and foremost in your bio, and the fact that you want to have empathetic children. I love that. We need more of that in this world, I think. So,
don't we? We sure do.
So before we kind of get digging into the weeds here, just tell us a little bit more about your work and what is it that you do out there in the big world, and what kind of things are sparking your mind these days?
Yeah. So probably, I don't know, 10 or 12 years ago, I landed on what I believe to be my personal purpose on this planet, and that is to have an outsized positive impact on the world. We can talk about how I got there, but that's how I try to live my life. So, how can I have an outsized positive impact? So whether it's building for-profit businesses and making sure that they're, forces for good in the world, whether it's being a part of or starting or supporting nonprofits. You pointed out my kids, like I feel there's a responsibility that all of us parents need to make sure that we're sending young people out into the world that are trying to also make it a better place. So everything I do, all the work that I do, the books that I write, the conversations I have like this one, I'm hoping are orienting me toward having that outsized positive impact.
And I can feel for all of that, because a lot of the work that I do personally is kind of in a little bit in the same direction. I just finished a book that, and in it, I'm trying to relate to people that you have so much value that you don't know about. You really don't realize how much value you have, and it's partly it's an opportunity, for you. Go out and share with the world what how you're unique. What's your voice? How are you different? What are you doing to make a difference in the world? And that leads me to a question, because purpose is a big deal these days. People are talking about purpose. I think ever since back in, I think it was 2008 or 2009 when Simon Sinek wrote his book, Start With Why,
Yeah.
That's all about purpose, right? And that became a big deal, and it's still a big deal. But it's always led me to a big question. Imagine you are the guy or the gal who works in a factory, and every day you go and you punch out those cardboard coasters that you see at a bar, and your company prints those and puts sayings on them or the bar's name or whatever. But that's what you do every day. So two-part question. What does a company do who does something that's very practical like that? How do they make their purpose noble without it sounding like some sort of corny cliche? And then how do I as an employee connect to that purpose without feeling like, because I know people that have what a lot of people might call a mundane job, and I don't think any job's a mundane job, but people call them mundane jobs or whatever, and who go to work every day thinking, I'm not curing cancer. I'm punching out cardboard coasters. How do we get those people to kind of move in the direction of, but you do have a purpose? I'm really interested. You're an expert on this. I want to hear, what do you say about that?
Well, yeah, and I wouldn't say I'm an expert, but I would say I'm obsessed with this. And
Okay.
to the point where what you just described is why I started Purpose Group in 2023. So like, the shirt that I'm wearing here is a Purpose Group shirt created by folks at the first business that we bought, which is a print and apparel company in Bowling Green, Kentucky. And, as I built my companies, and they were all in innovation and technology and creative, and I was working really hard to figure out how do you authentically bring purpose to life in these companies. It was, I think, easier when you can create a culture where you take an annual cruise and you get to pick and choose clients, and you get to work with nonprofits, and so you can inspire them through that. And I felt like it was all founder led, founder enforced, basically. And so it's like, all right, well, yeah, if you have someone like me or like you guys that are passionate about purpose, okay, they can weave it into their company and be authentic about it. But how do you do that at scale? How do you do that at businesses that yeah, people are getting paid hourly and literally punching a clock. So Purpose Group is my attempt to figure out how to do that, to
Mhm.
teach others how to do that once we've gotten there. And the first company we acquired is Gerald Printing in Bowling Green, Kentucky. And that was the initial task. And so, to make it fairly simple, it was, hey, let's bring everybody in the company, 75 employees together for a full all day offsite and try to uncover what is it about this company that brings them pride? What impact can this business really make? And so I needed that to come from them, right? So we're not acquiring a company so that I can come in and say, here's your purpose. It needs to be
Sure, sure.
something that everybody has buy into and believes in. So we did that work. And then, when I talk about purpose within a company, it's the operationalizing of that purpose that is the key. Every business that has any sort of, experienced leader, they've worked on what's the purpose, what's the values, what's the vision, what's the mission. Oftentimes that's where the work ends, and it ends up
Mm.
on the wall, on a poster. It ends up in the
Right, right.
onboarding,
Yeah.
and you get a new employee and you're like, yeah, this is why we exist, and then they never hear it about again. So I think for me it's the operationalizing of it, and ensuring that the leadership team is really behind it and believes in it. And it's not, you can't have six people on leadership team and two walk out to their departments and they're like, yeah, it's just a bunch of hooey fooey stuff, but we got to do it because the CEO, everybody has to be marching to the same beat because the team's going to resonate with that. So
Mm.
that's how we're attempting to do it. And the idea with Purpose Group is I want to have dozens of these businesses in, manufacturing, blue collar businesses, just people working hard. How can we inspire them to find purpose and to live a life with more meaning?
I mean, I know that I've had times when I had that happen when I was sitting with, and it's usually more kind of frontline employees that kind of feel this sense of I'm just a cog in a machine and I do this stuff, and or at least in my experience, that's the way it was, and would sit down with them and say, okay, let's just talk very openly about this purpose idea and talk to them about what they did. And I was talking to a lot of audiovisual technicians in hotel environments, and a lot of them just had a very, very cynical view of that. It was, we just set up shows, man. We'd set them up and then they run and we tear them down. And I said, well, wait a minute. What kind of stuff do you do? And it was funny how many stories came out.
Mhm.
Stories of, well, one time I was working for this cancer. We did a show for this cancer charity. And I really felt like for a moment that I was making a difference. And I said, that's where purpose, there's your purpose. There's purpose right there. You know, and so from that, we were able to come together and say, well, what is our purpose? And it came down to, well, we help people send messages that can change the world. And I
Mm.
said, that's a pretty damn good purpose right there. You know, it went from we don't really matter, we just set up shows and tear them down, to we help communicate messages that change the world.
Yeah.
And it really did send those folks off. I don't know how many days that kind of took hold. I'm hoping they're still there, but it sent them forth kind of thinking, tomorrow I'm going to think about that.
Mhm.
I'm going to get up tomorrow morning and kind of head in that direction. But it's tough. I think it's tough for people to do it every day, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. A lot of people don't buy in. And sometimes they will see the light over time. I mean, I've certainly had that in my companies where it's, you've got your naysayers and folks, and then something happens and triggers it, and they realize that, that they are doing meaningful, purposeful work.
Well, I
Mhm.
think so many people think that to be meaningful, it has to be curing cancer. They
Correct.
have to work at St. Jude Children's Hospital. And it's like, no, think about all the little jobs that make a difference in people's lives every single day. And sometimes they're little things that people don't really pay attention to.
Mhm.
But yet, if it wasn't there, what would happen?
So when
What would
I
happen?
found my purpose, that's when I started my company called Dragon Army, and this was my first attempt. This was 2013 when I started Dragon Army. This was my first attempt to try to put purpose and have purpose woven throughout the company. And we came together and we ended up landing on a purpose to inspire happiness. And okay, Dragon Army builds websites and mobile apps and helps companies with marketing. And you say, okay, well, how can you inspire happiness doing that type of work? Well, we started with our own team. can you inspire happiness in your team members? Can you make their day a little bit brighter? So when we had 20, 30, 40, 50 people, imagine if suddenly those 40 or 50 people are happier in their lives. I used to say, look, you see one of your teammates struggling, you bring them lunch because they got back-to-back meetings. Now they maybe go home and they're a little bit kinder to their children. They tip the waitress a little bit more. They're just nicer, kinder people, and that's infectious, right? And so we said, let's start internal, and then outside of that, our clients. Can we be the best part of their day? Typically, a meeting with your agency is not the most, it's like, oh God, I got to have this 2-hour meeting. Let's find a way to inspire a little happiness in our customers. Maybe they're going to go out. And then you go a little further and you say, the work that we do, the websites that the end user hits, is there surprise and delight? Is there a way that we can make it simpler for them to get that thing that they're trying to do done? And then we go beyond that and we say, what about our community, the companies around us? We were near the Beltline. Can we support? So just like, but you can start small. You can say, look, let's just inspire happiness within each other. That is enough. I think that's enough, right? So it can connect directly to the work, or it can just connect to you being a better human.
So it's a ripple. It ripples out. And I'm a big believer in that. And I talk about service. It's one of the key topics that I talk about. And my belief is you can't serve customers well until you're serving each other well. If inside your organization
Mhm.
you're fighting each other and competing with each other and trying to outdo each other, then how can you possibly switch that off and switch on this? I'm all about service to other people. You
100%.
need to be of service to each other. And so I'll never forget walking into a sales manager who was talking about his sales team, and he said, I can't, these guys are all over the place, and I've tried everything, and every year we have this competition. I said, stop right there. Just
Mhm.
stop right there. Stop the competition.
Hmm.
What you need to do is you need to set up something where it inspires people to help each other.
Yeah.
So why not, instead of having a competition that says, if this person hits this, they win, how about setting one up? If everybody hits this, the team wins. Thus, when the first person hits it, now their job is to help everybody else so they can hit it, because nobody's going to get a thing unless the entire team hits it. So now they all started working together and helping each other. And the senior person who had all these tools and ideas, and almost every year they would win it anyway, they began to help all the junior members so that they could further it. And so what ended up happening a couple of years later was, as the team grew, those who were junior members, they started to do that too. When another junior member would come on board, they would start to be more helpful to that junior team member.
Yep.
So instead of competing with each other all the time, they began to cooperate with each other and to help each other. And that spilled out to their customers. It spilled out to the rest of the company. It was pretty amazing how that can work, to your
Amazing.
point.
Yeah, no. Look, when I first started building my purpose framework at Dragon Army, it was focused on what ended up becoming purpose, vision, tenets, and values, which is just sort of a construct that allows a company to understand why they exist, understand how they're going to behave, and then understand what they're going toward. What I realized is there's two other components that have to exist for that to really manifest itself. The first is you have to have a trusting leadership team, that you
Right.
can't create any sort of authentic change like that without people at the top rowing in the same direction. That can take time. And then on that back end of it, you have to create a company and a culture where everybody's in it together. And so, to your point, I use what's called the great game of business, which is basically what you just described. It is a way to get everybody working toward one goal, show them how they can help affect that goal, reward everyone together. He talks about Jack Stack, who created it, talks about the equivalency of a sports team. So you go to the Atlanta Hawks and you say, hey, random person, what is your role on this team? I'm a defensive specialist. I'm a 3-point guy. I'm the point guard. They know what they do. What's the score in the game? They know the score in the game. What's our record in the conference? What's our goal this year? And then how do you contribute to those goals? They all can answer those questions, right? And then you win the championship together or you don't. You go to most any business, you ask any random person, how do you impact the metrics, the goal for this year? They don't even know the metrics or goal for the year, but they certainly don't know how they can help it. How are we doing against that goal right now? Like suddenly you're like, wow, we're not really acting as a team. So the great game to me is is what really ties my purpose playbook together. It allows everybody to start really working in the same goal sets and with the same motivations, and then you all win together. And there's nothing better than that.
Well, I have we're going to move off this path a little bit. And I'm going to ask you a question, and we ask this question of every guest. And it has to do with being human. And I think it ties into what we're talking about. But how do you see I don't want I try to ask this without being too leading, but how do you see the world either becoming more or less human? And kind of what does that mean? When I say being human, what does that mean to you? And do you see the world as, are we heading off in a terrible place? Or are we heading off in a beautiful place? Or are we kind of sitting still? How do you see the state of the world when it comes to being human? And then I'll get back to being the purpose thing in a minute. We'll tie that in a minute. But I'm curious because we are talking about being purposefully human, and
Mhm.
that's what this organization's about. So let's dive into the human piece first.
Sure. So it's an interesting point because one of my problems with humans is that we like to have our tribes and we like to
Okay.
divide ourselves and we like to talk about why our neighborhood, our state, our political affiliation, our religion, our et cetera, et cetera, et cetera is better than yours. And we don't
Mhm.
like you because you're not like us. And I, read that stuff where that goes back to, thousands of years ago when humans had to be in tribes and fight against the other tribes, and that's how you lived, and so you had to do that. I think that we are a more divided world today than maybe we ever have been because you've got social media, you've got the internet, and it just polarizes us. The messages that we hear just reinforce, oh yeah, your tribe is the better tribe, your group is the better group. So when I think of what you mean by human, I think you mean empathy, caring for others. That's when I say, when I hear you say people, we want to be more human. That's what I hear. But humans also have this other side. One of the most, he's polarizing, but he's also just one of the most successful humans in our lifetime is Elon Musk. Well, Elon Musk very famously said, the biggest problem with our world today is too much empathy. So you've got this leader who's top five most famous people in the world. Again, a lot of people don't like him, but a lot of people do, saying that empathy is the problem. So where do I sit on the state of things? I'm not encouraged. And I see us only dividing ourselves more. And one of the reasons that I believe in business as a force for good is because you talk about all those ways that we compartmentalize our lives and our even our sports teams. We hate the other sports team. Well, business is a place where we all come together and can work toward a common goal, and it's usually very diverse, people from all sorts of backgrounds. So I believe business is our best chance to bring people together and work toward bigger goals. So business has to focus on that. And this is where, look, I love capitalism, but there's downsides to capitalism. And I think you can have capitalism with heart. You've heard conscious capitalism. So I think there's ways to have a successful business that brings people together and that business is trying to affect positive change around. I mean, look, like government's not trusted, politics divide us, everything. Business seems to me the last place where we all come together and can change the world. And so that's sort of the mission I'm on.
But what's interesting, or maybe sad, is that a lot of people in business and as people get into business, they think that the job, if you ask them, what's the point here, they to beat my competition.
Mhm, mhm.
And I don't think that's the point. I think the point is to help as many people as you can. How do
Unfortunately,
you
that
help
is
more people?
their goal, though. Those that say that is the point of their business.
Yeah,
That's what
It
yeah.
might it might be, but I personally don't think that's the
sure.
goal of it. I think the goal of business is to help as many people as you can.
Hmm.
Ultimately, to your point, it's a vehicle for us as human beings to help each other. Even Adam Smith, the father of capitalism, let's say, or the father of modern economics, and I've been doing some research on him. He said, yes, capitalism is about self-interest. However, it needs to be virtuous. It can't just be a free-for-all where everybody goes around beating each other up and somebody wins. It's about being reasonable and virtuous. And by virtuous, he meant it has to take into account other people. It has to account for people that are sick, people that need help, people in all different parts of life. And he was pretty clear about it. He wrote 2 books, Theory of Moral Sentiments, and he wrote The Wealth of Nations. And in Theory of Moral Sentiments, he's very, very clear about virtue. And in Wealth of Nations, he talks about this self-interest idea. And by the way, he only mentions the invisible hand once in the entire Wealth of Nations, and everybody goes off on this invisible hand idea, but he mentions it once. But anyway, he's very clear about this idea of being benevolent, that it's not cutthroat. And being cutthroat, in fact, he kind of downs that. He says, no, that's not what we should be. And we in many ways become that. We become so, very cutthroat, very, I got to win at all costs.
Yep.
And I think we're missing out on the empathy piece. And what you said about empathy earlier has really bothered me as of late. There have been religious leaders who have come up, at least I know of 2 books that have come out saying empathy is a sin.
Oh,
and I'm like,
terrible.
how is that possible? Whether we were created, evolved, whatever, we're here on this earth and we have empathy, and it's one of our big strengths.
Yeah.
If you didn't have empathy, you wouldn't know how to deal with your child who's screaming and wailing.
Yeah.
You can't be a good parent without empathy.
And look, those religions, they often are the ones that follow Jesus Christ. And they would even describe him as the most empathetic human that ever lived, cared for everybody, didn't matter who you were or how, your affliction or your crime, and it's like, how did we get from there to, and again, it goes back to, like, we like to separate people and say, well, you're not like me. You don't love other humans the way I do. So that's not something that I can support. You guys might find this interesting too. When I started Purpose Group, Purpose Group is a private equity fund, but it's more of a holding company. So we're evergreen. We don't flip our companies and sell them every 5 to 7 years, because you can't do what we're trying to do and flip companies every 5 to 7. You got to hold them for decades. So when I originally was pitching it to investors, and mind you, by the time I started Purpose Group, I had built and sold multiple businesses. I'd had quite a bit of success. The original pitch deck was, we're going to put the purpose playbook into these businesses. We're going to create operationalized purpose at these businesses. And because of that, we're going to have these results. I could not get anybody interested. I had to flip that and say, here are the financial results we're going to get. And by the way, we have our own operational framework. It's called Purpose Playbook. But here's all the, we're going to help with employee retention. I had to get away from that because people just can't and I had so many people that invest in private equity that were like, look, I like you, I like your experience. This just feels like I'll write you a check and I'll feel good about it, but I probably won't get my money back. And I'm like, what world are we in which you operate a business by helping people feel proud and excited about the work they're doing and treat them well, that business is not going to over succeed and do better than they've ever done. But those things don't match up.
But when your only metric is financial, and we're missing big pieces of the pie here. Financial stuff is one metric. There are many others. I mean, your life has many other things to it than just the financial.
Yeah, if I can jump in here for just a second. This is why, Jeff, we wanted you on the program. This is sort of the essence of why we wanted you on the program, because there is this false choice that has become beaten into people, and it has its starkest implementation in the behavior of corporate leaders. To Neal's point, it's become all about the quarter, and
Yep.
the P&L statement and flipping my company. Interesting that you don't, when they think that's like the ne plus ultra. I can't do any better. You look at people's LinkedIn profiles, serial entrepreneur, built and sold a company on average every year for 20 years. Okay, that's a metric, but it's, to Neal's point, it's not the metric. It's not the only one. And to that point, I've been doing a lot of research lately to see if there are places in our world, because I agree with you. I think we all are in agreement that there are issues in being human in today's world. That's probably understating it by 3 orders of magnitude, but whatever. There are challenges. So I've been doing some observational research on are there spaces where we gather now that are inherently human, where people are nice to each other, they're kind, and what have you, that we can learn from, like going to the ball game. It's pretty rare that somebody misbehaves. 50,000 people gather, and somehow they figure out how to get along.
Even Yankees fans sitting next to Orioles fans, right?
Imagine that, or Red Sox fans, for goodness sakes.
Yeah.
But somehow they figure it out, right? They negotiate the tens of millions of interpersonal interactions that occur that afternoon when they go to the ball game, and they go home. And if somebody says, "How was the game?" You either get, "Oh, it was great, they won," or "So and so made a great play," or maybe you took your grandchild and they had their first ballpark hot dog, and that's all they want to talk about. But it's rarely, I don't know, at least in my experience, it's rarely, "Oh, the group next to me were just jerks." I mean, they seem to be, they seem to have set out to make life miserable for everybody around them. So ball games are places that I think people are inherently human. Public parks. I mean, out here in Seattle, I go down to a park on Puget Sound, and on a nice summer afternoon, there'll be hundreds of people there. Same story. Everyone's kind, they're nice. If the ball rolls away, you don't get a surly look and what have you. You get somebody picks it up, walks it back, hands it to the child, and says, something polite. So I think, and to the point about the workplace, I can only compliment you on a good call there, because it's interesting to me. This is something else we look at, Purposefully Human. These same people that are struggling at work, and I'm going to wrap this up with a compliment. So I'll get there in just a second. Outside of work, they seem to have less difficulty being human. They're community leaders. They're volunteer firemen. They take their kids to the library. I mean, they mow each other's lawn, when the neighbor's out of town or what have you. And like I said, this was really the key reason for asking you to join us today, because Neal, I've had the opportunity. I've not had the fortune to be a client of Jeff, but I've met many of his team, and they truly walk the talk. I mean, they are kind, they are nice, they engage in conversation, they're curious about other people, and they don't have those conversations from a negotiating stance. Like, what can they get from the conversation? They're just having human conversation. So whatever you're doing, within your organizations, and I have to believe it's expressed to your clients as well. Whatever you're doing, it's real. So one of my questions, and we've touched on this several times, thank you very much, is how do you do that? I mean, how do you walk the talk in a world that doesn't want you to? I guess is a good way to put it.
Well, or at least that sees success in a very different way,
Mm-hmm.
and wants you to you need to walk this tightrope, not that one.
Exactly. Good way to put it.
Yeah, thank you for saying that, by the way, Jerry. Couple of reactions. One thing I will say is, because I believe that if you build businesses like that, they are going to outperform. So I intend with the portfolio companies and Purpose Group to have great financial metrics. I mean, if I'm going to change hearts and minds and I'm going to teach or help business leaders around this country think that they can be human and still build a business and have it be successful, I need to show them that yes, you can provide for your family, you can have success. It's not, to your point, the end all be all, but it has to exist. You can't have, hey, build your business and take care of people and you'll make 5% margin when your industry makes 15. You do have to, in my opinion, I have to do both. So I'm focused on both of those things. Talking about the team, I'll share two examples. We had a Dragon Army, we had a leadership offsite, and we had the 6 or 7 leaders at a dinner. And at one point, I asked, I said, hey, I'd love everyone to go around and just share why you are here at this company. You could all certainly go make more money somewhere else. I mean, we paid well, but like there's always someone who wants to pay more. Like you could do that. Why are you here? And we went around, and one of the women said, in my personal life, I get really busy, with my own stuff. We're at our house, we're taking our kids places, we're doing things, and I don't make the time to give back. At Dragon Army, that's built into who we are. And
Mm.
so I'm literally a better person because I'm at this company. And if I went to another company, I'd be doing almost none of that kind of thing. So you give me the opportunity to do good in the world. And that was like, wow, that's huge. The other thing I'll share is, and this is a tip I learned from my kids' school. On a weekly basis, they have their assembly, and the principal does acknowledgments, and he lets the kids raise their hand and they can acknowledge someone. Stand up. I want to acknowledge Susie because yesterday on the playground I fell down and she came over and she helped me. I skinned my knee. She helped me. I want to recognize these 2 kids because this, that, and the other. And it's this really powerful moment. And so I thought, what if I did that at my company? So at the next company meeting at Dragon Army, I said, hey, you know what? Let's take 10 minutes. And I just want us to acknowledge, if you have something you want to acknowledge someone for, I'm telling you guys, it is the most powerful thing we do at that company. I have had employees on vacation at the beach dial into our weekly meeting and literally say, I'm just here because I have 4 people I have to acknowledge. And so I'm going to wait till the end of the meeting to do acknowledgments. They're dialing in from vacation to do this. We have had more than one person join our company and in their first weekly meeting, witness the acknowledgments and witness the tears and the power and emotion coming from that. And afterwards say, I felt like I was at a cult. Like it was crazy. I've never experienced something like this, certainly not in a company. So I think there are ways, simple ways to get people to care about each other, to show them that, we're all in this together, and to build that in powerful, simple ways. And so, but it goes back to like, this is why I want to build Purpose Group because, okay, it's one thing for me to do that and me to put these things in because I care so much about it. How do I empower other leaders to do that where you don't have to be the entrepreneur that likes to stand in front of people and talk and get people excited. Like there's not everyone's that leader. So is there a framework that we can get behind that brings everyone together? So that's really the work. But yeah, I appreciate you saying that, Jerry. I think that's the one of the things I'm most proud of, especially with Dragon Army, is just like the heart. Ripples Media, my book publishing company, is very similar right now. It's small,
Yeah.
it's growing, but man, they're just the most awesome people you'll ever meet.
I, you know, I got a really simple word for what's going on in there. It's called love.
Mm,
A word we don't like to use in business, in the business world. People, oh my God, you can't talk about that. And I don't mean romantic love. I mean about caring for people love.
yeah.
You know, um, people ask me all the time, what does it take to be a great leader? And I said, be grateful for your people.
Mm,
You know, when you, I mean, to have people just want to call in because they love their people enough that they want to make them
Hmm.
happy and want to, that it makes their day to make somebody happy. That's amazing. I was telling Jerry a story a minute ago about this morning. I was at a coffee shop and I told a young lady that um, to keep smiling because you're making my day and you're making other people's day. And she melted. She just became like a different person. She was already happy, but she was even happier.
Yeah,
And
amazing.
I'm still beaming because of that. I'm still like, wow, that's
Yeah.
made my day.
Uh-huh.
And it was a hell of a bagel.
Well, it was a good
I don't
bagel.
want
This
to.
place makes great bagels.
I don't want to move on without highlighting something Jeff said. It was the choice of the word encourage, because I think this is where a lot of
What was
people
the word, Jerry? I'm sorry, you broke up.
encourage.
Okay.
He encourages leaders to have these behaviors and these thoughts, and I think that's something that sets what Jeff does in his organizations apart from most others. Because I have to be honest with you, I hear lots of these messages, but what I hear the leader doing is enforcing
Mm.
as opposed to encouraging. So instead of you invite people into this ecosystem, and then they get to choose, how to play their position. Too much of this kind of work ends up being like, you know, hey, I'm a consultant. I'm used to hearing this kind of thing, but like the program of the week. Oh yeah, we did this last year, this the year before, and this the year before. Okay, as one of my colleagues used to say, bend over, here it comes again. Yeah, and and so they would give themselves permission to check out. Yeah, I'll go to the teaching, I'll go to the workshop and what have you. But if I just hang in there, next year it'll be gone. Whereas
That,
you're,
that's that's just about every company you come across.
yeah,
100%.
whereas you're
Yeah.
igniting, and I'm choosing that word very carefully, the humanity of people by encouraging and inviting them to participate. And that's such a powerful difference. And obviously it works. So when I said, why did we want you to be on this program? That's like at the core of it right there. You have put something together that walks to a different place, for lack of a better terminology, and it also explains, Neal. This is something we've been talking about in Purposefully Human. It explains why all these other programs just fall flat on their face. You will be more human. Like, come to our workshop, to participate in the brainstorming, and we'll do sticky notes and things like that, and what have you. And then next year there'll be a different consultant in there
That's right. That's right.
offering something else, and there hasn't been any real growth, human growth.
But that's and what I keep hearing here and what's ringing in my head is we're talking about culture.
Mhm.
Talking about creating a culture where one, people feel safe to do and to behave this way. So a question keeps popping in my head to you, Jeff. Would you be, and maybe you already do this, but would you be at all concerned walking into your organization and talking about love?
No, not at all.
And would anybody in your organization turn around and say, the old man has lost his mind? Or would they be like, okay, let's get into it. Let's talk about this. Let's talk about how we infuse love into our organization. And nobody in your organization will probably freak out. They'd probably be like, yeah, this is pretty normal. And if I were a new guy who came from another company, I'd probably sit down and say, this is crazy. But I would realize that this is their culture and it's different,
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
right? And so how, Jeff Hilimire is going to walk into another company, sit down with a group of, let's say, leaders. I've consulted with companies, and the first thing you do is you sit down with a bunch of leaders, right?
Yep,
And
yep.
you sit down and say, we're going to talk about love, which probably wouldn't be weird to you, but it probably would be weird to them. How do you get them to go, okay, let's go in this direction? What what do you do? How do you begin that conversation? How do you get them into we're going to be a more human organization, which is really, if you're going to talk about love, you're talking about making it a more human organization, right? So How do you do that, Jeff?
That's an interesting challenge because I'll be honest. If the assignment was go in and talk to them about love, and it's your first meeting with these leaders.
Well, no, I'm
Um,
not saying, I'm saying that in a kind of in a broad way, not
yeah,
necessarily
okay.
specifically love, but you're coming in to
Okay.
talk to them about being a more human organization. And you're going to kind of feel that out. I realize, you're
Yeah.
walking on weird ground, but ultimately you're walking in saying, we're going to change the dynamic here,
Yeah,
guys.
I got a great example. And it's funny, as you talk about this idea that like, yeah, you have one consultant, they help you with stuff, and then the next year another one and another one. I joke that Purpose Group, I started Purpose Group, and it is a consultancy where I buy my customers. So I get to be a consultant with Gerald all the way through, right? So I don't have to just go. And I have helped companies where I come in and I do the thing and we work on it and they find their purpose and everything. And then, I follow up 3, 6 months later, and it's like, yeah, we got busy, and then it just goes away. All right. So going back to your question, so this is interesting. As part of my workshop to unearth purpose, one of the things I have them do is talk. Let's say it's a group of 30 people. Break them into 5 or 6, and have them talk to each other in a small setting about who is their role model, who in their life, and it doesn't have to be someone they know personally, but often it is. Who is the person that really just respect and want to emulate their attributes? And this was originally to help us get to values. And so what I found was I would do that like 3 quarters through the first day, and there were tears. People talk about their grandfather or their grandmother or this person
Yeah.
that cared for them, or this person. And it was so powerful. And I realized I need to move that way up into the meeting so that we start and get them feeling that so that when we move into purpose, they get it, they feel it, they understand
Gotcha.
that. So I've done that before. But to me, the right answer is you have to be that person all the time. So, we've all had, I remember I played college tennis, and first 2 years I had a young coach, and it was like, I knew when he had read the latest tennis magazine because we were doing totally new drills that next day. It was like, oh, you need to hit your backhand and turn your shoulder more. And it was like, coach, like, let's find something and stick to it. And so leaders that read that EOS book or read this book and they come in and they're all charged up, it has to be authentic. And so to me, I need to show them vulnerability. I need to show them over time, this is who I am, so that when I talk about something like love, it does feel authentic. And no one's like,
Hmm. Hmm.
he's just trying to get the most out of us and hit his numbers. It's like, no, this this
Right.
this guy may be crazy, but he's crazy in a good way. And it's real. We've seen it, in the one-on-one interactions. If they see me interact with somebody, if they see me on a stage, if they listen to a podcast, like I'm trying to be the person I am so that when I do have that conversation about love, it's like, yeah, this is the guy. This is what he does.
Well, it's funny. When you were talking about, you gave your example of, um, you kind of go in and get them to start feeling, right?
Yeah.
Which is really largely what you talk about. Because what's one of the first things they tell you when you start a new job? Leave your emotions at the door,
Yes.
which is the biggest crock of crap ever, right?
Yes.
Because human beings can't leave their emotions at the door.
Mhm.
If we did, we wouldn't be human beings. I mean, we
Mm.
are emotional creatures, and
Yeah.
emotions are partly how we make decisions. It's how we decide whether this is going to be a good deal or not a good deal. It's not based on the statistics. It's not based on the numbers. It comes down to, at some level, your gut. You
Mhm.
say, I'm in it or I'm not. The
Mhm.
numbers are all wrong, but something about this guy is right and I'm going with it. Right. So we use our gut. But anyway, it reminded me of, there's an old phrase that says ready, fire, aim. Tom Peters used to say this all the time, ready, fire, aim. And you're kind of doing that. You're kind of going and say, you know, come in, this is what we're going to talk about now. I want you to feel.
Yeah.
That's the fire part.
Yeah.
And then you're going to aim. And then the aim part is, now we're going to talk about purpose.
Yeah.
But in order to get to the aim part, I want you to fire first.
Mhm.
Get in here and talk about your feelings. Who meant something to you in your life?
Yeah.
Grandpa, your mom, your dad, your Boy Scout leader, your Girl Scout leader, whatever, and get you all teary-eyed so that you begin to say, yeah, business is business, but being a human being is something else, or being a human being is bigger than that.
Right. And it's okay to do that here. You know, we're in a
Yeah,
safe
it's okay to
space.
be that person
No?
here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, especially when everybody's telling me it's not.
That's
But we
right.
got to get away from that, right? Now this, which leads me to, and I hate to do this because Jeff, I could sit here and talk to you for the next hour or two, right? And if I ever, you're in Atlanta, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. If I get down to Atlanta, I'm definitely calling you. We're going out for a beer one day,
Okay. I love it.
um, or whatever your thing is. But I want to ask you, kind of, this is a question again we ask every guest, but I'm really, really psyched about what you're going to say to this. What advice would you give to anyone to help them be more purposefully human in their life, in not only their work life, but their everyday life? Because we need to carry, I think we need to carry our everyday life into our work life.
Yes.
The two, they all, I hate the work life balance idea. You know, it's not about work life balance, it's about work life integration, right? How do we be the same person? And when I say purposefully, I mean, intentionally human, deliberately human,
Yeah.
deliberate with some goal in mind. That's not self-seeking, not self-interested, but it's some sort of direction to it. So, with all of that,
Okay.
how would you answer that question?
So I turned 50 this year. And when I get asked, what's your biggest regret? I've made tons of mistakes. Oh my gosh, tons of mistakes. But I don't regret those mistakes in almost all cases because it helped me learn and become better at the thing, right? Better leader, better
Mm-hmm.
person, better father, whatever it is. You have to make those mistakes. That's just how it works. So, but the one thing that I say is I regret not finding my personal purpose earlier in my life. I found it at age 35, 36, 37, somewhere in there. I wish I'd found it at 25. And I think you have to live some life to find your personal purpose. But when I get a chance, I don't, it doesn't matter what I'm talking about. I could be talking about social media and AI. At the end of that talk, I'm going to say, but the one thing I want all of you to go out and do is to do the hard work to find your personal purpose. And the framework I give, if I can just for a second, is to me,
Sure.
it's very simple. You draw two circles, they overlap, Venn diagram. The first circle on the left is your superpower. It's what do you do that brings you joy, that you're passionate about, that when you do it, other people take notice. What is that thing? And that's why I say I'm running a small internship program at Purpose Group right now with high schoolers. And I said, look, I want you to be thinking about that, but it might take you 10 more years to figure out what that is for you. It might take you 15. But so find your superpower and then find the change that you want to make in the world. How do you want to make people feel? What's the wrong that you want to right? And in the middle of that is where I see people finding their purpose. Now, the next phase of that is how am I spending my time to make the biggest impact on that, right? What am I saying yes to? Who am I hanging out with? What's my job? What do I do at my job? How do I treat my family? Like to your point, once you find your personal purpose, oh my gosh, it's so great and it's so freeing. And all my friends that are like successful vice presidents of this and that at their businesses and they've got great house and all these things that are so lost because they haven't done that work. And they're like, what am I doing? What am I just chasing the rabbit? Like, and, and,
Right.
and I believe that's the most important thing. So it's sort of a weird answer to how do you help, what
Yep.
advice you would give people to be more purposeful, but like find your personal purpose. It has made the difference for me. And not only that, I've been more successful both financially with the things I've done, but also just the impact, right? So when you set your own goalposts, like we talked earlier about like how do you step out there and sort of lean in a direction no one's leaning? It's because I feel so sure that this is the work that I was meant to be doing, that
Mm.
of course I'm going to do it. I'm not going to hide
Right.
from it. I
Right.
have to do it, right? So that would be my answer to that question. I just hope everybody does, and it can take a year, it can take 2 years. You talk to your family, like, does this sound like me? But when you find it, man, I've seen light bulbs just go off.
Well, before I invite Jerry to give me his kind of final words to you, I'm going to give you my final words. First is a big thank you for being with us today. And we are down to our like last couple of minutes here. That's why. I want to thank you for being with us. Second, your kids are very lucky to have you as a father.
Oh, thank you for that.
You're, you
Appreciate it.
are, you know what you just said. if they can do that, they're going to have a wonderful life. They may not be, wealthy by money standards. They may not have a big giant house. They may not have that stuff, but they're going to have something else,
I hope so.
that's really important. So you should be very proud of that. And I look forward to them growing up and making our world something better.
Thank you.
But thank you so much for being with us, and your words are just tremendous. So, Jerry, I'll leave the final bit to you.
I only wish I had found my purpose at 35. I was, and maybe placing the problem in the wrong place, and then maybe I should have understood it to be mine all along. But I recall coming of age at a time when that would have been considered selfish, and so it took a fair amount of deprogramming to even open my heart and my mind to the question. So it wasn't by 35, I can tell you that much. But in the time since, it actually began with an offhanded comment from a colleague. Because in those early days of my career, I was effective, but I was pretty miserable, to be honest. And they so I don't know if we were having a beer or what have you, but this individual said, you seem pretty miserable a lot of the time. You should find the work that you want to do. And I said, I think I'm doing that. And they said, I don't think you're doing that. So that led to some conversation, and he said at one point, do you realize that you know more people at your age than almost anybody I know, and you have an ability to bring them together? And I go, what? that I can't put that on my resume. I mean, that's not a skill. But fortunately, this was somebody I trusted, so I held it in my heart for a very long time and did a lot of self-reflection. And I realized, oh yeah, it really is. To your point, I love your framing, by the way, about your superpower. And so I took it as part of my purpose, and I've added a lot of logs to that fire ever since, thankfully, to build on that comment, to use my abilities to connect people, and have just been like amazingly rewarded in the years since. So I love that construct. Although I do wonder, so this could be a follow-up conversation sometime. Are there other people that, because of when they came of age or because of their workplace experiences, need deprogramming? And do they need to? We won't hold you now for that conversation, but it's sort of like
I've got one. You want me to share real quick?
Yeah, please.
So I had a team member working on my team at Engage. So built Spun Logic as a marketing agency. We sold that, and then we were now part of three agencies came together. It was like a 350, 400 person agency. I was president of that company, and this woman worked at that business. And then when we sold that, I jumped out to start Dragon Army, and she went with the acquirer. So for four or 5 years, she worked at that bigger agency that bought Engage. And then I hired her back at Dragon Army. Wonderful, amazing. She's still there. She's been there 10 years. She's now president of Dragon Army. Early on at her tenure at Dragon Army, I remember I come in early and she comes in early. And so she came in and she just looked really upset. And I said, Court, what's wrong? What's happening? She goes, oh, my best friend just went into labor, and her husband's out of town and she's at the hospital. And I just, I know I'm the only person she has in Atlanta, and I just don't know what to do. And I was like, well, why aren't you there with her? Get out of here, go. And she looked at me like, what? She's like, at my past company, I would never have thought. So
Yeah.
here she is thinking it's not even an option. And she had worked with me before. So she had been so deprogrammed from working with me to then this other agency, to where she just didn't even think it was possible. She came in and just was going to work and try to keep in touch with her friend by herself having her first child. Of course, she left. And so I was like, wow, there is a lot of work to do.
Yeah,
She's
yeah, yeah.
possible.
Boy, that's really poignant. Uh,
Yeah.
and I can, once I had opened myself to the question, uh, Jeff, those things started to happen to me as well,
Mm,
both for me and for people around me.
yeah.
And things that when I was in my 20s and climbing the career ladder and what have you, I might have said, just buck up and deal with it, either to myself or to a colleague or to a subordinate or what have you. Now I found myself saying what you just said, go be with that person. They need you, they don't have support, or you have a family member that's ill, a child, whatever it is, go take care of your human needs. The work will be here. In fact, one of the very first times, so real quick story, one of my team members, when I was back in corporate consulting, uh, was pregnant. And uh, obviously something was on her mind. So we talked about it and what have you. And her concern was if she took pregnancy leave, she'd basically get off the promotion track. This is not uncommon in consulting firms. And so we delve into that for a while. And I admit there were some cultural issues to be concerned about that, but much of it was nuts and bolts. Like, well, who's going to pump out the weekly report? Who's going to hold this meeting? Who's going to facilitate and what have you? So I said, look, I'll just come up and be you for a week. You tell me what you think you need to know about, and I'll report on that and what have you. I'll be your arms and legs. I won't be your leader anymore. I'll just be you until you get through this. And the company won't, other than the fact that there's somebody else's name on the email, the client won't notice the difference. The company won't notice the difference. And you tell them when all is said and done that this was all your idea. And sure enough, she ended up having a great childbirth and spent time with her kid and in those early days, and ended up getting promoted and what have you. But to your point, I mean, before I found my purpose, I would have just like, look, Buttercup, you need to you need to figure this out because that's the title of a film that's going around right now about the healthcare crisis. But anyway, Suck Up, Buttercup, that's the name of it. But anyway, uh, and then I had these epiphanies, and I studied, I read, I reflected, I talked to people, and just like the Grinch, my heart grew 3 sizes that day. That kind of story. And I found myself not recognizing myself. Like, you wouldn't have done that 10 years ago. And it's like the old Looney Tunes cartoons with the devil on one shoulder and the angel on the other shoulder. And the angel would say, damn straight you wouldn't have. And it's a good thing that you do.
Mm,
And it becomes, that's why I asked the question about deprogramming, because I suspect there are a lot of people out there with angels and devils on their shoulders. And unfortunately, we've touched on this today, unfortunately, writ large, corporate culture plays to the devil. You got to work those extra hours, you know, send somebody else to pick up your kid. Uh, Hire a home worker to come and take care of your sick parent. You can't do that. You have to be here. You have to be back in the office, even though you're going to end up on Zoom calls all day anyway. But you have to be back at the office. And there's just a long list of uh, myths that people have bought into, but it plays to I think it was Abraham Lincoln that talked about the better angels of our nature.
Yep.
I think too much about what's going on in the corporate world plays to the lesser angels of our nature. And so another time, maybe we'll talk a little bit more about, well, how do you deprogram people? How do how do you get them to the point where they can receive your message? It can sit in their heart, and it can be nurtured. Anyway, I'm done.
Love it.
Thank you,
Well,
Jeff.
Jeff, thank you so much for being with us. We're going to have to run. So,
Yeah, thanks for having me. Looking forward to chatting in the future.
yeah, look forward to it. Thanks so much.
All right, bye guys.
Take care, Jeff.
Bye. Okay, Jerry, we got to do this rapid fire.
Well, I said what I wanted to say, so.
Well, I have to say one great thing Jeff did for me was he confirmed something. I've been thinking lately about, we keep talking about being human. What is it? And a lot of things have run through my mind, but he said for him, being human was empathy, care, and concern. Right. And I've over and over, that's what I've been thinking about. I keep coming back to that. What is the quintessential piece of being human? That's about empathy, care, and concern. It's about caring about other people and the impact you make on them. And, that's all couched. So much of that is couched in empathy. And I think when it all comes down to it, how do we become more human? We sit back, we pause, and we think, if this were me, how would I feel? And what would I do? How am I going to do things? How am I going to react to that? Considering all of that, and he really confirmed that for me. But what a fantastic conversation. And I really appreciate you inviting Jeff to be with us today. And that's really all I have, Jerry. So,
And the only thing I would add to what you just said, Neal, that Jeff touched on several times, is the concepts of showing up and being authentic.
Yeah.
I mean, because a lot of people
not doing it in a fake way.
Yeah, a lot of people will put the PowerPoints up in a presentation, and the words empathy will be on there, and we care about our people, and what have you, but they don't show up, and they're not authentic, and that just plays to the mistrust that's already rampant in our workplace culture, because it's like, okay, here comes another PowerPoint, with another consultant, and but our people don't show up, and they're not authentic.
But we need to, I think more people need to do what he said. We're ready, fire, aim.
Yep.
Go in and get people in touch with their human side. And then let's talk about that. Then we throw up the PowerPoint slide and say, okay, what you just did was empathy, right? What you just did was care. What you just did was concern. How do we apply that to here, right? So he's dead on about that.
Yeah, great conversation. I'm very happy.
Very good.
Having heard from Jeff now, and it's going to be a good day.